Well, for more on the UN's anniversary, I'm joined by Jack Ling in Beijing. He is now with the Global Health Management Department at Tulane University in New Orleans. He worked with the United Nations for over 30 years. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Jack, tell us, looking forward, what are the UN's biggest goals coming up and biggest achievements looking backwards?
Well, I think UN is not a perfect organization, but it is an international world order. Since World War II, there's a place where people conduct bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. Governments talk to each other before they resort to any more armed conflict. So I think the Secretary General has spoken earlier that the achievements are very substantial.
We know that there have been many black eyes, obviously the Ebola crisis, the refugee crisis, what is going on now. Where does the UN need to double up its efforts at this point?
Well, I think the organization, the UN system that takes care of that problem is the World Health Organization, WHO, headquartered in Geneva. It is an organization that has done a tremendous amount of good work, has eliminated smallpox, has saved millions of lives together with UNICEF in terms of saving lives from malaria, from smallpox, from tuberculosis, from trachoma, and many mass diseases. So the UN agencies have done a good job in terms of protecting children and women from disease and hunger. But on the other hand, an organization like WHO was created some time ago. There is an element of a political structure, because the WHO, for instance, the regional committee is elected by members of the regional governments. So it became a little bit politicized. So I have actually advocated some kind of reform, make sure that political consideration is not included in electing officers at the regional level. And I spoke on that subject some time ago, early this year, and I gather that many people share the same view. In fact, WHO is now undertaking a review and to reform it, so there's a pool of staff and resources to tackle emergencies like the Ebola we faced last year.
Jack, there's been some criticism about the balance of power within the UN itself, that 5 members have veto power. Do you see this evolving in any way?
Well, it should be evolving. After all, the 5 veto powers are powers of the Second World War, the allies, the victors. Now the world has changed, it's considerably in 70 years, so there has to be some adjustment. Unfortunately, there are political considerations. Each member state in the veto power have their own interests. Sometimes it's a little difficult to come to some kind of a compromise to make the kind of change to reflect the world today. After all, it's been 70 years since the Security Council was created.
I see. When you think back to when this organization was created right after World War II, what was envisioned for it?
Well, envisioned, they thought that they can prevent, there would be no war. That certainly
right.
From a global point of view has achieved. But there are regional conflicts, there are religious considerations that have promoted some regional conflicts, and I think the UN is a place to have countries get. But of course, as you see in the last few years, the Middle East has blown up in very difficult circumstances, and so I think the UN can play a role, but I think the member states have to accept the ideals and the charters of the UN and fulfill its obligation and pony up their commitment. Because, for instance, there are requests for funds for refugees. Governments make commitment, they don't pay it up.
Right.
So UN basically is not a super government. It is associated with member states. It cannot do what the members do not want to do. So the member states must pony up and pay up their dues and make commitment to follow the preamble and the ideals of the UN and the decision making the UN.
Well, Jack Ling, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much for your insight, joining us live from Beijing.